What's up, everybody? Welcome to the PlayStation Forecast episode 57. I'm your host, Alex Derrickson, and I hope the last 7 days have treated you all well. I kind of took a sabbatical from games is overstating it, but I didn't get into a lot. Nothing. I kept kind of cycling through, right? I kept going through that library, that backlog that I often so frequently talk about, right? And I thought with the Wednesday stream, I was like, let's go ahead. Let's hit the 50% point. Let's do that Walking Dead final season episode 2. I got one chapter into that thing, so a third of the way through it, because these are the trophy lists are split up into 3 chapters now as opposed to the Telltale typical 5. And I don't like it. Like, it feels so far removed from what season 1 was, what season 2 tried to carry. And yes, season 3 was kind of weird and different, but like there was enough there to kind of propel. Like I talked about this a couple weeks ago, right? Where there was enough in season 3 or New Frontier, since it's not like season 3 or whatever, that propelled me by the end of episode 1 to do episode 2, and that propelled me into 3. And by the time I was done with 3, despite the fact that it was pretty so-so, I felt obligated in a good way to do 4 and to do 5 and finish it up. By the end of season 1, or by the end of episode 1 rather, a couple weeks ago, I finished it and I was like, okay, like I'm okay, I think, here. And I was like, but let's finish it. It's a short season. There's only 4 episodes, a few hours each. Knock them out. So I started episode 2, and there was a cool twist, an unexpected little reveal that I did not see coming of a character that I kind of forgot about. And I was like, that's cool. Like, wow. All right, we're doing that. It felt like it was kind of like drumming up an old loose end to tie it off eventually by the end of this, you know? But it wasn't a character I ever really thought like, oh, what happened to them? Or, oh, it'd be great to see them again. It was nothing like that. And got introduced to a character in a group. I believe they were called the Whisperers. And by the end of that chapter, I was kind of like, I'm okay. I'm okay to call it a night. And I was bummed. I'm still kind of bummed about it because nothing about this makes me want to see it through to the end. And that frustrates me because, 1, y'all know my love for Telltale, and 2, you know my love for the Walking Dead series. And I think I just gotta hunker down, not make an event of it, not make a big thing, not make a big deal, and just sit down and play through it. Whether I have to get drunk to do that, I don't know. But I just got to get it done. I'm still, if you're watching live, I'm still checking the volumeter, the VU meter there, making sure everything's good. But I kind of got this hankering to dive into some stuff maybe that older to an extent. I'm not talking like Genesis era, but I had tweeted that during the Stanley Cup playoffs and this offseason, I wanted to learn everything I could about hockey, and then also was going to swear my allegiances to the Anaheim Ducks because I love Disney, the Mighty Ducks. I have a hat from them from like 93, from when I was 5, and you can do the math, figure out how old I am. And I was like, you know what? They have some really good retro gear too that totally suits my nostalgic needs. They tweeted back at me and they said, welcome aboard. So obviously now I'm committed. But when it came out almost 6 years ago, when I was still working at GameStop, I checked out a copy of NHL 14 because in NHL 14 was anniversary mode to celebrate the 20th anniversary of NHL 94, which was, if not, I don't want to say was, it is the greatest hockey game ever made, and it was best on Genesis. As a Genesis boy, this ticked all my boxes, and I played it with some friends, and then I took the game back and never did it again. Never went back, never picked it up. I could never warrant $60 for a game I was only going to play one mode for, right? Like, just didn't make sense to me. The dollar to fun ratio, the dollar to mode ratio never added up. But what does add up is $2.50 for that game mode. So I bid on that, and I went out to my local GameStop, went and said hi to my buddy Will. I asked him, does this have the original case? Because the one by my house does not have the original case, and I'm particular. It did have the original case. I picked it up, and I came home, and I played NHL 94 Anniversary Mode for a solid, like, 2.5 hours. And it's so much fun because it takes like, it's not like an NHL hits approach, right? It's not like super simple arcadey. It's arcadey, but with some semblance of simulation boiled down into a 3-button control scheme for the most part. You got your hustle, your shoot, your pass, and then on L2 is your spin move, and then L1 is your deke. But it plays so nice and so smooth, and it's just, there's less rules and fewer penalties and all that stuff. So I dove into that for a little bit, and that was just like, I talk about games, right? The certain games that are like coming home to a hug, and that's kind of how that feels for me, is I get to kind of go back. It was cheaper to do that than it was to, go out and find a copy of NHL 94 and then hook up the Genesis and all that noise. Like, way easier to go this avenue. Now, I picked up 2 physical games. So, the joke's on me here is Captain All Digital Boy. But I understand when a license could potentially expire. I'm not saying that it is. This is not to drum up fear, because this series means a lot to me. But I'm not saying Capcom would ever let it go from its clutches. There's no reason to. But I dove into DuckTales Remastered again for the first time since it came out. I love DuckTales. I love this new DuckTales that Disney XD is rolling with. And I'm just in a DuckTales kick. And I love me those platformers, right? And DuckTales Remastered is so crisp and so clean. And if you've ever followed me on Twitter for at least a month, you've probably seen me go and bring up how I feel like DuckTales on the NES is the best 8-bit soundtrack of all time. The remastered version of this that Jake Kaufman did is awesome. It's like, it's one of my heaviest rotation like albums on Spotify. It's so good and it plays so clean. But the game takes what is arguably one of the best platformers of all time from the 8-bit era, makes it so much more gorgeous and so much more tenable into 2014 when it came out. 2013, 2014, whatever it was. And it's so clean and it's so precise, and the platforming is still perfect, and the soundtrack is just that much better. It's so much fun. But something went off in my head that's like, Alex, what if that license expires and then your PS3 dies? I don't think lightning's going to strike twice with when I was able to resurrect the ashes of Scott Pilgrim versus the World onto my PS3. So I went out, bought a physical copy of DuckTales, so I have that as a backup if anything should go wrong. So I played a little bit of DuckTales, popped in and out a little bit of Windjammers this week. I feel like there was something else that wasn't Super Mega Baseball 2, which is I have the son, I have the kiddo, and I've got to like stand up and play and have a circular vision of my house. I feel like there was something else, but clearly if there were, I would remember. So yeah, still not a huge fan. In summary, still not a huge fan of this final season of The Walking Dead. I'm gonna have to just grit my teeth and get through it. NHL 14's anniversary mode still kicks a ton of ass. DuckTales Remastered still awesome. Windjammers is still great. I played more Rocket League, and I've gotten really bad at that game. Not that I was ever good, but I definitely got bad at it. But we've got a lot to talk about this week, so I don't want to hold you up. I've already taken up 10 minutes of your time, We got a lot of juicy stuff to get into, to sink our teeth into, to digest, and to process, and then to take the waste and push it out, and then let the rest of the remaining nutrients go throughout the body, because this is the PlayStation Forecast, and it does come to you each and every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on youtube.com/PressX2Alex and podcast services around the world. And if you want to get the show early, you can. And just how early, you may be asking right now, as it happens, Monday nights, unless something changes. I record the show live at twitch.tv/PressX2Alex, where you can watch the show live as it happens and see that sausage get made. And remember, I don't look at the chat until much, much later, until after we're done, until I'm in like the post processing of all of this stuff, because I don't want to get too distracted. I'm already doing all this stuff by myself, so trying to like keep up with a chat it's not going to work. So I look at the chat later. Feel free to contribute to the chat or follow me on Twitch and what have you. But I'm not in it, right? And remember, if you want to get involved in the show, you can write in to psforums.pressxtoalex.com or just get at me on Twitter, like so many of you do a lot, at twitter.com/pressxtoalex with any thoughts, comments, commentaries, concerns, news, anything like that you want to maybe see discussed. And if you want to support the show, you can support over at patreon.com/pressxtoalex at the one tier to rule them all, which is just $1 a month. You can go beyond the dollar. I will never stop you. Some of you already have. I think you're all crazy, and thank you so much. I love you. But you can support it just for $1 a month. You can help keep these mics and lights on. No content paywall, nothing behind a gate, nothing you got to pay money for. It's just to help support the show. We are getting semi-close, actually, to hitting the $100 a month goal, in which case I will take 10% of those and of that take-home and apply it straight every month to Extra Life for Cincinnati Children's Hospital as that gets ready to gear up here this summer. And yeah, if you don't have the buck to toss, no big deal. You can support the show just by subscribing, just by writing a 5-star review on iTunes, just by sharing it to the masses on that PS4 subreddit, on whatever forum you're on. If you send it out to the news outlets, let them know some crazy guy in a basement in Ohio is solo hosting and producing and editing a PlayStation podcast on his own. I don't know. I think technically I am by default the number one PlayStation solo hosted, produced, and edited PlayStation podcast done in a basement in Ohio. And that's cool. I don't know how many PlayStation podcasts there are, but I gotta say we've made this one into a top 10. Right? Like I think we're good enough to be in the top 10. I'd say top 5, but I don't want to get too cocky and I don't have the numbers to back that up. But I think 10 is good. If you agree, share it, subscribe, write a 5-star iTunes review that just says, I agree. This is a top 10, if not top 5, if not top 3 PlayStation podcast. And those words, exactly. Verbatim. Help me out. I love you. Anyways, that's that. Let's do it without further ado. Let's get into the news. Ladies and gentlemen, like an hour before last week's episode went live, an article over at Wired.com came out with an interview of never heard of a Mark Cerny. We have some PS5 details, some actual, tangible, readable, digestible PlayStation 5 details. I'm talking specs, I'm talking hardware, I'm talking dev kits, and I was going to do the Wired article, but there's a lot of meat and potatoes on that, and IGN has boiled it down into a more concise message, so we're going to read that, but the Wired article with Mark Cerny can be found in the episode description of this video and of this audio podcast. So if you want to read it, it will be there for you, I promise. But for the sake and interest of time and my sanity, big old Jonathan Dornbush over at IGN has broken the whole damn show down for us. So let's just get into it. As of right now, we don't know how much the next PlayStation console will cost, but Peter Rubin, the writer behind the Wired PS5 piece, tweeted out some information following his article regarding a potential PS5 price point. Cerny told Wired that he believes, quote, we will be able to release the system at an SRP, suggested retail price, that will be appealing to gamers in light of its advanced feature set, end quote. That doesn't necessarily give us a firm price point, but could suggest, depending on the price and availability of the tech used to power the PS5, we could see a more expensive console than this generation, but perhaps not hugely outside the norm. Cerny's latest interview also does at least offer us an idea of when we won't expect the PS5's release date to be. According to Wired, the PS5 release date will not be in 2019. That doesn't lead us to an exact release window, but plenty of conjecture has pointed to 2020 as the likely release year for new consoles, both from PlayStation and Xbox. This would put the new systems 7 years after the launch of the PS4 and Xbox One, roughly equivalent to the generation before that's lifespan. A Kotaku report from April of 2018 indicated the console was a ways off, certainly not before a vague 2020 release timeframe, and as that report notes, with something as big as a console launch and one so far out, things could change quite easily. That window is what Kotaku has continued to hear up until as recently as GDC 2019. Mark Cerny actually divulged quite a bit about what will be under the hood of the PS5 in terms of specs, with an AMD chip at its core. The CPU is created from AMD's Ryzen line, 3rd generation, with 8 cores of 7nm Zen 2 microarchitecture. This chip also, quote, includes a custom unit for 3D audio, end quote, according to Wired and Cerny, which should work through TV speakers and surround sound, with headphone audio being the best option. A report by Semi-Accurate from a while back stated the PS5 would use an 8-core Zen CPU and Navi-based GPU. The GPU, according to Wired, is, quote, a custom variant of Radeon's Navi family, end quote. This GPU will allow ray tracing. IGN wrote about what ray tracing is and why you should care. Ray tracing is an algorithm, basically designed for graphics that will actually predict the light patterns off of an object to create a better sense of depth and realism. That's a very boiled down to my understanding definition of ray tracing. I'm sure there's much more that can be unpacked and expounded upon that. I'm not the guy for that. I would check out Digital Foundry or maybe a Giant Bomb thing or the Wikipedia article about ray tracing, because like I said, that is a very boilerplate Googling what is ray tracing and finding the most layman term of it that I possibly can. But you're going to hear ray tracing tossed around a lot, I think, this console generation. I'm going to get into why I don't think we're going to get quote unquote real ray tracing from it. But that's down the road. We're going to keep going here with what old Jay Dorn has. The system won't abandon physical media, and so it won't be a download only console, according to Wired. The biggest inclusion, according to Cerny's description, will be the inclusion of a specialized solid-state hard drive, one that Cerny told Wired, quote, has a raw bandwidth higher than any SSD available for PCs, end quote, according to the publication. SSDs are, of course, available in desktop and laptop computers and can be even used as external hard drives for the PS4 and PS4 Pro. But Cerny is aiming to demonstrate that the PS5's SSD will allow for a new level of speed and performance. Cerny highlighted these capabilities to Wired by playing Marvel's Spider-Man on PS4 Pro, which had a 15-second load time for fast travel. Cerny then demonstrated the same load on a dev kit, which reportedly was a, quote, low-speed, end quote, version, and it only took 0.8 seconds. That is 0.8, 0.8 of a second. Cerny did highlight that the load time speeds are not the only benefit of the SSD. It can reportedly render worlds at a quicker pace and allow for quicker movement in-game. The PS5 will also support 8K gaming, but the demonstrations Wired saw were on a 4K TV. Following this reveal, IGN broke down why a lot of pieces need to fall into place for true 8K gaming. IGN also had one of our tech experts break down what those PS5 specs actually mean for the next generation of gaming. Those are other articles. Good news for PS4 and PS4 Pro owners. Your PS5 will be backward compatible with PS4 games thanks to its architecture being based on what was used in the PS4. Sony is able to bring its already released and still upcoming games to the next-gen console. What that will mean for the existence of remasters like The Last of Us Remastered remains uncleared, particularly with so many heavy hitters left to be released for the PS4. Will The Last of Us Part 2, Death Stranding, and Ghost of Tsushima be optimized for PS5 but also run on PS4s? Will any of them move solely being PS5 games? It's unclear, but at the very least, whatever it is and has been released on PS4 will still work on PS5. According to Wired, a Sony representative specifically said Death Stranding would be released for PS4 still, but that room was left open for both PS4 and PS5 versions of the game. Now let's talk some PSVR. Good news first, your existing PlayStation VR hardware will be compatible with the PS5. Boom, forwards compatibility. Suck it. So just like all your standard PS4 games will be backwards compatible, your PSVR game library should work on the next generation as well. As for whether a proper PSVR 2.0 headset will launch with the new system or at any point in its release, Cerny and the rest of PlayStation remain mum on the possibility. They didn't outright deny the chance, and so an upgraded PSVR headset could be in the works, especially considering advancements in VR tech and hardware outside of PSVR. In terms of services, despite plenty of details coming from Wired's breakdown of what's to come with the PlayStation 5, we don't know how Sony's existing services will work on the next generation consoles. Presumably, it is a safe bet that something like PlayStation Plus will migrate over to the new generation, but how services like PlayStation Now might make the jump remain uncertain. Of course, PS4 and PSVR games are expected to work on the PS5. We don't know a ton about what Sony first-party games and studios will be made specifically for the PS5. However, there have been some reports that suggest Sony is emphasizing PS5 development internally. One of the most notable reported pieces of info prior to Wired's report was that PlayStation's first-party studios are now allegedly focusing their development efforts beyond what's in the works for the PS4 already on the PS5. Industry analyst Daniel Ahmad recently said, quote, "In general, most of the focus for Sony's first-party studios is on PS5 right now. It is still early to talk about next gen, but I imagine we'll hear some whispers coming out of GDC," end quote. Ahmad also reported that PS5 dev kits are out in the wild, and he's heard positive things about them. Let's see here. It may be silly to note, but as mentioned above, we don't actually know what the next PlayStation will be called, and Wired's interview with Cerny didn't offer any additional info on that front. Let's see. Unfortunately, we don't have any information about the PS5's exact launch date or price point, and as such, don't have any pre-order information. So, yeah, that's that. So what we do know, right, are the specs. We know the backwards compatibility with PS4 games. We know the forwards compatibility with the VR stuff and backwards with the VR hardware, and backwards compatibility with the VR games is basically assumed at this point, right? We know that it's going to support 8K, which I think is smart because over the next, if we're moving in 7-year console cycles, just based off PS3 to PS4 and now was inevitably PS4 to PS5, I think you're going to be looking at 8K displays being something that's going to be more prominent over the next 7 years. So in a way, Sony's future-proofing themselves there, because you can imagine there'll be an iterative step, whether it'll launch as like a PS5 and then a PS5 Pro, or if that will be an iterative step made down the line, right? Now, the big questions I think were answered. The big consumer-friendly questions were answered. Talking specs, talking power, talking backwards compatibility, and talking VR support. Now, I think the big question too that was asked was, why do this? Like, why are we doing this mid-April when State of Play just happened, a month ago? And then Sony's already backed out of E3, however many months ago that was. I think the big takeaway from that is not only did Sony dominate a news cycle for a whole 7 days, but you're getting out, and again, getting out in front of your competitor. You're not making an official announcement. This is not an official reveal. This is not a tech demo. This is not anything visual. This is straight up Mark Cerny, who I was kidding when I said never heard of him earlier. I don't want anybody being like, what? And throwing their radio or whatever out the window. But I think you get ahead of the messaging. You're out 2 months early. Now you've set the table. If you're Sony, you've set the table for Microsoft. Nintendo's doing their thing. They'll have a Switch Mini or whatever, but you've set the table for Microsoft to come out, which is a known quantity that in June at E3, they will be announcing new hardware. You set the messaging for you're kind of letting them play with the release date though. If you're letting Microsoft kind of dance around with the release date, possibly picking their spot if they want to come out and be like, and it's going to be fall of 2020, then Sony can react to that. Sony can adjust to that. But in terms of specs, in terms of power, in terms of capability, you're setting the table for yourself for Microsoft to possibly outdo you, possibly outspec you. But when you're coming in with backwards compatibility, that means you're already launching. So let's walk this back. Let's say Microsoft comes out in June and they come out and they're like, yes, our new system will have a disc-based system. We will have a digital-only system, a stream anywhere setup, and all your games are going to play on it. Backwards compatible, so when you get the system, it's going to launch with the Xbox One library, Game Pass, and then this new system. What Sony is coming out with is saying, hey, it's going to at least play the PS4 games, which means when you buy a PS5, you're already able to do Horizon, you're able to do The Last of Us Remastered, you're able to do God of War, you're able to do all of these great standalone exclusives, which was what Sony hung its hat on. So out the gate, you've already got a better launch lineup comparatively if you're going just by previous gen games. Now, whatever Obsidian might be working on, whatever Compulsion might be working on, Turn 10, the Initiative, and the other, and Team Ninja, or Ninja Theory, whichever one Microsoft owns now, whatever they might be working on, whatever they may have to show come June, will help there. You're kind of, again, you're setting your own table in terms of that with Microsoft. But what this allows is now in June, when Microsoft comes out and they go, new system, they don't really get to share this. They don't get to own the spotlight. They have to share it, because now what's everybody going to be doing? They're going to be going, okay, let's take what they have from, tonight's E3 thing and compare it to Sony's announcement in April. Let's look at the specs. Let's look at the hardware. Let's look at this. Immediately, without having to come out on a Monday night and do an E3 presentation where they don't feel like they have a lot to show, they're still going to be brought up in the conversation. It's still going to be juxtaposing those two. It's still going to be looking at a column A and a column B. And all they had to do was put out an article in Wired in April. And already they will be talked about in June without having to be there. So from a marketing standpoint, from a consumer standpoint, from a competitor standpoint, it's a brilliant move to get out in April. And yes, you're kind of throwing up a lob for Microsoft to possibly dunk on your ass, but at the end of the day, Microsoft doesn't get to own their moment. They don't get to own their spotlight, because it's still going to be running, okay, how's this compared to what we know about PS5 already? And I think from that standpoint, if we're looking at this as like an Art of War kind of Shinzu kind of thing, like, holy shit, like, what a move. What a ballsy ass move for PlayStation to be like, we'll just get ahead of it 2 months early. Moving on from that, the big questions everybody had, right, as from a PlayStation owner's perspective, what about these exclusives? What about these games I've bought? What about this backlog? What about this just sea of titles I, as a consumer, am inundated in? Take them with you. Then the next thing is, okay, what about the VR? I've contributed an additional $300+ into this additional hardware format. Don't worry, it's coming with. And then, then you look at like, will these up-res these games? That's not answered. But from the heavy hitting questions of like what we expect, what we're hoping for, what we want out of it outside of the specs, those are answered. We kind of have a good idea. Our feet are better stable on the ground, right? So it's a fascinating move, and it was a surprising one, I think, to an extent, but I was very mad Tuesday morning when they were like, here's this, and I was like, well, shit. There's any semblance of recency, but it gave me a week to think about it. And like, why make this move? Why get out in front of the news cycle? Why not be at E3 when, you have this stuff to announce, when really they're going to, again, retreat. They're going to go back in the shadows for a little bit. They've made their move. They've stamped their flag in the ground, and now they can recede. And now they've passed the ball. The ball is out of their hands. It's not in their court anymore. It's up to Microsoft to respond, and then from there will be up to Sony to respond. And it'll be this little back and forth. But, I've said it so many times, rising tide raises all ships. So if it does come out and Xbox does have the more powerful console, great. That's awesome. Fantastic. Good for them. I don't necessarily hope that's the case, but like, you want it to be equal. You want to give people a reason to decide, but also pick yours. And I think that's getting out of the message with backwards compatibility. That's getting out with, coming out and being like, hey, look, this is disc-based. That was the other thing, is it's disc-based, and your old games are going to play. And we've started making these infrastructure changes in the PSN, and, all these other things, like these possible red flags, like the big, big, big red flags, right? The ones that you can see from space, they've lowered and been like, hey, don't worry about it. We're cool. We got this. And it's cool. It's exciting because, and then saying the dev kits are in the wild, right? Like, that was the one thing I said was, until we know for sure dev kits are in the wild, or until we have code names, it doesn't feel real. And now we're in a moment in time where this feels real. And you've got Jason Schreier over at Kotaku saying, like, look, it's still going to be 2020 when these things come out. So that gives us eight-ish, 7.5, 8 months to sit on our hands and just watch these two companies play tetherball with each other until one of them can wrap the ball around the pole first. I'm excited, especially as like a Sony fan and as a gamer, and someone that enjoys these deep dive game news kind of things. It's awesome. This is what you want. This is what you're hoping for, and I love seeing them get ahead of the messaging a little bit with what they felt comfortable revealing. So I want to know what you think. I genuinely do. So if you're watching the video version, sound off in the comments. If you're listening to the podcast version, get at me on Twitter, twitter.com/pressxtoalex, or go to youtube.com/pressxtoalex and sound off in the comments there. I really want to keep this discussion going beyond just this week, beyond just this episode. Because I think we're going to start getting to that point here because we're 2 months away from E3. So that news is going to start drumming that earthquake has happened, and now it's kind of we're waiting on the tsunami to respond, right? What a time. We're here, and I'm going to be here with you for it. So subscribe and comment and follow, and let's keep this shit going. Sticking with some more Sony-specific news, going over to Variety. This is Liz Lanier. Sony is limiting sexually explicit content in games. This is a boat I have rowed out to sea multiple times during the existence of this show. And here we are again, because people are mad. Sony is limiting sexual content in PlayStation 4 games by instituting new in-house standards, the Wall Street Journal reported on Tuesday. The new guidelines are intended to enable game developers to, quote, offer well-balanced content on the platform, end quote, a spokesman told the Wall Street Journal. Further, the guidelines should help ensure that gaming, quote, does not inhibit the sound growth and development, end quote, of young players. The stricter guidelines are partly due to the company's concerns over the #MeToo movement. Sony doesn't want to be associated with game content that could depict women in a demeaning way, according to an unnamed Sony official who spoke with the Wall Street Journal. Quote, Sony is concerned the company could become a target of legal and social action, end quote, a U.S. Sony official said to the Wall Street Journal. Now, with the popularity of streaming games via Twitch and YouTube, some games that aren't even available globally can get more visibility as well. This was another concern of Sony's, according to the Wall Street Journal. In particular, sexually explicit titles released in Japan which feature nudity of animated characters who sometimes appear to be underage are of concern. The company did not share details of the full guidelines, declining requests to discuss them in detail. Sony did not immediately respond to Variety's request for comment. I can't believe we're still talking about this. I can't believe people are mad about this. Like, if you can call me a corporate apologist, you can call me a Sony pony. I don't care. If you are mad that games are being censored or adjusted or tweaked or whatever verbiage you want to use so that possibly underage looking women aren't portrayed in sexually explicit situations, get the fuck out. Like, just for real. Full stop. The times have changed. This is not Dead or Alive extreme beach volleyball titty jiggle physics anymore. We are beyond that. No one is putting out new metal albums. Their 3 Days Grace is gone. Stained isn't making new stuff. Fred Durst has moved on with his life. We are beyond the era of sexual provocation to sell things. We are beyond the point of questionable pornography inside of video games. We aren't there anymore. As a society, we have moved on. Now, if you need these kinds of influences to get your jigglies off, I don't know what the fuck to tell you. Maybe they're on Steam. I don't know. But if Sony wants to come in and say, look, we think this is gross and we don't want to be associated with this because we think it's gross, that is 100% their prerogative. And they have every right to do so because, as I said many weeks ago on an older episode talking about the censorship in games, that what happens when the government gets involved in games, which is the last fucking thing we want, because basically we're letting a bunch of cactuses with opinions talk about things they don't understand. Or media outlets like Fox News, or media outlets even like MSNBC or CNN. If you get people together in a round table of talking heads shouting at each other, the message gets lost, and you're probably surrounding your outlet with people who don't know what they're talking about. Case in point, like I said months ago, the Mass Effect sex thing, where Jeff Keighley had to publicly own a woman that just didn't know. He asked publicly, he asked point blank, have you played the game? Her response was, no, I have not. This is just what I've heard. And that's what's going to keep going, because something like some game that spells words with numbers with a weird colon that splits up a word into two words that look like reply midi, when really it's remedy, and the E is a 3 and there's a slash and another colon for some reason, whatever, has some sort of thing where a woman has giant breasts and they're in your face and she looks like she might be 16 or 17 because it takes place in a high school. What's going to happen is someone's going to complain and they're going to take it to a news outlet, and the news outlet is going to go, this game available on Sony's PlayStation 4 shows this. The lights flickered. That was strange, but there's a specter in my basement. But that's not the messaging you want. That is not the stigma you want attached to your brand, attached to your company, attached to when you're... Holy shit, let's just factor in the systems that have sold since 2013 worldwide. If you come in and go, this game is available on the PlayStation 4, which is owned by almost 100 million people across a multitude of ages, especially when games are still semi-wrongly associated as a quote-unquote children's toy. You're saying this game can be purchased by minors that display women, possibly underage, in strange situations that are very uncomfortable. That's not, if you are Sony, that is the last fucking thing you want. That's the last series of events you want attached to your name. Attach this wildly successful system that you've had since 2013. Attach the almost 100 million consoles, if not over 100 million at this point, that have been sold, that are in homes across the world. The last thing you want is this strange sexually explicit game being brandished across the United States news outlets, like I said, where wet seals come in, not the retailer, but a bunch of just wet, saggy-ass old men come in with their clapping butt cheeks together going, blah, blah, the game has the boobs, we gotta ban it. That's not what we want. Since the 90s, and I know some of you that listen don't remember this because either you weren't born or you were too, and I'm an elderly in this regard, but since the 90s, gaming companies have fought the government for self-regulation, to be like, look, let us handle our shit. Let us handle our business. Let's do this the way we want. And you had Andrew Lincoln going up and saying a fucking game like Night Trap will never grace Nintendo consoles. But then last year, what happened? Night Trap came to the Switch. Fuck you, Andrew Lincoln. But we're constantly fighting this uphill battle. Even today, we're still coming out as gamers, as press, as journalists, as fans, as what the fuck ever. I'm sorry, I swear a lot when I'm impassioned, but here we are. Coming out and going like, look, there are studies. Violent video games does not breed violent people. Here are a multitude of studies, but what happens every time there's a shooting? Every time that somebody does a terrible, heinous crime? We blame games. Games are the first thing that gets brought up by news. Games are the thing that get brought up by the government, especially in the United States. And we have fought at this point for decades to be like, let us regulate our business. And the government continuously says nay. And when stuff like this happens, if they get their teeth in it, if they get the hooks in it, if the media gets their hands on it, their grubby, dirty, clickbaity fucking hands on it, they're going to shine a light on it so bright that we can't ignore it. And we're going to have to come out and be like, no, we don't want the titty game. Like, you're misunderstanding the concept, like what's happening here. We don't this is a niche game for a niche audience of niche people that really they had to go to Japan to get. If you're Sony, that is a message you don't even want your name on. So while people are getting mad and going, oh, they're censoring the video games, fuck Sony, or it's coming out with like NetherRealm and Mortal Kombat because somebody covered a leg or something, like, get out. Games are art. Games are entertainment. Games are not propagated porn to be distributed to the masses via digital and brick and mortar retailers. Like, just full fucking stop. Like, right there. Done. Just, we need to be better. And we need to stop getting our jimmies rustled every time somebody does something that a very vocal minority does not like. like they come out of the woodwork like a bunch of zombies in a Romero movie. Just like Sony, like, and it's every time. It's with Mortal Kombat 11. It's with Sony and this censorship. It was months ago with Sony and censorship where they're just like, hey, like, we don't really want to show high school girls in sexual positions, and just came out of nowhere, out of the shrubs, like Homer Simpson, they're just like, what do you mean? And I'm beyond it. I'm past it. Do better. Be better. Next news story comes from US Gamer. From Matt Kim, The Last of Us Part 2 has finished shooting its final scene. The final scene for The Last of Us Part 2 has just been shot. While that doesn't confirm a completion of Naughty Dog's highly anticipated game, it does mean there's now footage of the ending floating somewhere in Naughty Dog's Santa Monica studio. Naughty Dog director Neil Druckmann tweeted an image of The Last of Us 2 script page with "The End" written on it, and wrote that he just shot the scene. What's the ending scene? Obviously, Druckmann didn't reveal it, but apparently the game ends with a cut to black. We'll have to wait until Last of Us Part 2 comes out to confirm, obviously, if there is indeed a cut to black at the end. The Last of Us Part 2 began development in 2014, but wasn't officially announced until 2016 at the PlayStation Experience. According to reports, motion capture filming began in 2017. In films, scenes aren't necessarily shot in chronological order, so it's difficult to say whether Druckmann shooting the final scene of The Last of Us Part 2 means filming for the game wrapped or not. However, if shooting the final scene of The Last of Us Part 2 indeed ends shooting for the game, that means at least one part of The Last of Us Part 2's development finished. Though with video games, there's still many parts of the game that will surely be under development. There's still no release date or release window for The Last of Us Part 2, but with the PS5 fast approaching, it's not hard to imagine Naughty Dog's sequel slipping into either the next gen or cross-gen. Not talked about on here is the Neil Druckmann tweet of... let me find it. It was Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson rapping. They rapped as well on Last of Us Part 2. So now all they need to do is put those cutscenes in the game, put the game together, develop it, publish it, print it, and get it out. So still no Last of Us Part 2 in 2019. There was some Polish retailer saying that it was going to be, it was like September or November. I quote tweeted that. It was a comicbook.com article, which, again, if you've listened to this show at really any facet of its existence, you know how I feel about that. Then I said my nonsense was tingling. And that's still where I stand with it. I don't think that's happening. That is, and the thing is comicbook.com is not going to print a redaction on that either. They're just going to make another article because they churn out so many articles. It's just going to get buried. Yeah, I'm calling you out. Didn't see that coming, did you punks? But still, I think Last of Us Part 2 ways away. It's got to be PS5 launch or cross-gen or something like that. I think it's for sure PS4. At what stage? Shoulder shrug. Next news story. GameStop will let you trade in a game for full credit if returned within 48 hours. This is from Nat Gurin at TheVerge.com. I'm sorry, Nat, if I just ruined your name. GameStop is launching a new promotion that will allow customers to return a game for full store credit within 48 hours of the purchase. The program, as circulated today by Cheap Ass Gamer and verified by The Verge, is called, quote, Guaranteed to Love It, end quote, and will launch next week with the debut of Days Gone, which is this week at the time of recording. The promotion window will apply only in the first week of a game's arrival, and GameStop will specify during various times which titles are eligible. Days Gone officially lands on April 26th, and customers will only be able to claim the full credit refund if they purchase the game between April 25th and April 28th. If they don't, quote, love it, end quote, they can trade the open item back to the store for a full price of $59.99. Taxes not refundable. And the deal only applies to the standard edition physical version of the game. GameStop did not name other games that customers can anticipate being added to the program. GameStop's new program arrives just as cloud gaming is beginning to pick up steam. Microsoft is set to release a diskless version of the Xbox One S in early May, which is priced at $250, which to me is ridiculous. In an effort to promote Xbox Game Pass, while traditional tech companies like Google and Apple are also getting in on subscription-based gaming services with recent announcements of Google Stadia and Apple Arcade. Even Walmart is rumored to be working on a similar service. Sony's upcoming PS5, on the other hand, will continue to include a disc reader, though it also offers its own PlayStation Now subscription service. So I brought this up as kind of as a follow-up to some other GameStop news we've talked about since I've started this show. Also, as a former employee, it is salient to me and pertinent to me because I still have friends there, very close friends that I consider very much a family. Okay. So my thoughts on this. I get it. I do get it. 100%. Even when I was working there, a very common series of events that would unfold. We're going to use Walking Dead Survival Instincts as the example because it comes up in my mind the most. Walking Dead Survival Instincts, the Skybound game that was it Terminal Reality developed. It was an AMC. It was based in the AMC TV show universe. You played as Daryl and you drank sports drink to regain your health. I want to say it was Terminal Reality. I want to say it ended the developer. Yep, it was developed by Terminal Reality, published by Activision. This game was bad. Like it looked bad. Like the gameplay demos looked bad. The press for the game looked bad. The game itself looked bad. It played bad. It was a bad game. Like it was a hard, like one of the worst games of the year that year. But it was at peak Walking Dead season. Like peak Walking Dead zeitgeist, peak water cooler talk being The Walking Dead. So people were kind of clamoring for this game because it wasn't the Telltale one. It took place, and for the people that were fans of the show, it took place in the universe they cared about, not the comics. So this game came out, and I vividly remember people bringing this game to the counter and me looking them dead in the eye and going, look, here is the return policy. If you open this, it is yours. You will have to trade it in which case we are giving, and I scan the game, $22 for it, for a $60 game that you're going to not like, and you're going to bring it back. It was to the point where we were like almost negotiating with our district manager to allow open returns on this game because we knew it was going to come back. So this alleviates that. This assuages that because it is a consumer-friendly move to be like, hey, it is a select list of games, which is going to be very confusing for a lot of the shoppers there. I'm not kidding you. So tying it to a specific list of games, I think is smart. I think it is a good move. I think it is a complicated move from a consumer standpoint while also being a consumer friendly move to allow select games to be traded in for store credit for a full refund within 48 hours. My issue with it, what sticks in my craw, is that this kind of, I don't want to say screams, but yelps the Blockbuster no more late fees policy adjustment that Blockbuster made that slowly started the snowball of its demise. I see this becoming one of a series of trial moves that they kind of just have to full on implement permanently. And that makes me nervous because when you start making pivots like that is when you start to get almost too consumer friendly, which means you're going to start kind of hemorrhaging the cash flow. And we saw last week or 2 weeks ago, I forget, the hemorrhaging of the loss that they took in fiscal 2018. So moving to offering full refunds, but keeping it to an unknown number of titles and limiting it to just store credit, I think helps. It monitors potential abuse, because that's the thing. That's the other thing you've got to combat is you come up with a move like this and it's immediately, okay, how are people going to exploit this? How are people going to play this in their favor? How are we going to possibly lose rolling this out? And again, from a former employee standpoint, GameStop is pretty good at plugging all of those holes before they roll something out. They know, I don't want to say while I worked there, very, 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 very few moves felt like they weren't entirely thought out. There were a few, and it would take me a minute to think of them. But stuff like this, full-on policy implementation change, is typically pretty well sussed by the time it gets to the stores. That doesn't mean it's not going to be exploited. That doesn't mean it's not going to be something that backfires on them, but it at least feels a little well thought out. So there is that. I still feel like it could get a little messy. I still feel like this is the start of something that is going to become a bigger problem, but it shows that they're trying to change. They're trying to adjust. They're trying to make it more of a thing to keep people coming back, especially when you can't sell the full game codes anymore, especially when systems are starting to move to a predominantly digital like movement. It's a good move. It is a well-timed move. It is a well-placed move. Whether it actually does them any good, we will see. Whether the messaging is more opaque than it is transparent, we will see. I don't know how this one's going to play out, but I don't want to spend more time on it than we should. So the next news is over at the PlayStation blog, where Scott Rohde, game development head of Worldwide Studios, has some news about raising Kratos. It's only fitting that on the 1 year anniversary, we're excited to share this peek behind the curtain of God of War's very own Santa Monica studio with the trailer for our upcoming film, Raising Kratos. This full-length feature documentary coming very soon to PlayStation YouTube is an exploration into the massive undertaking it took that changed the course of the God of War franchise. More importantly, this is the first time PlayStation took a chance in telling a story about the people who created this work of art. After nearly 3 years in production and 400 hours of footage, please follow the cinematic journey of second chances rooted in family, sacrifice, struggle, and doubt. The ultimate goal was to go beyond a making-of piece and dig deeper into the experiences of those who spend relentless time and effort into making something great. All creative endeavors, especially those of this magnitude, require an incredible amount of dedication and focus that constantly toe the fine line that separates both success and failure. The hope is that once people see the experience of Santa Monica Studio unfold on the screen, they will recognize the undying passion for their work and the incredible respect they have for their craft. For God of War specifically, the fans have shown a great deal of love and loyalty, which has earned them an everlasting seat at the Santa Monica family table. We're extremely proud to share this window into a very long journey with those who celebrate God of War as much as we do, as well as those who will discover us soon. I love that. We talk so much and so often about the people aspect of gaming, the people aspect of game development. And what better way to do that than with a complete masterpiece of games to show the work and the effort of the hundreds of people it took to make that and bring that to life. I am excited. I love God of War. I have a project in the cooker, in the old oven, regarding that game, what it means to me, that I'm looking very much to following through on in the next couple months. It's going to be a big endeavor for me, so I'm excited to do it. But be on the lookout for that. I'm hoping to have that done in like a month. We'll see, though. Life gets in the way. Last real bit of news here is there is a Avengers Endgame crossover event starting this week with Fortnite. This is from Steve Watts over at GameSpot. With the latest and likely biggest movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe on the way this week, Epic Games has teased the next crossover event for Fortnite Battle Royale. Much as it did last year to tie in with the release of Infinity War, some kind of event or game mode will debut in Fortnite later this week. A tweet from the game's account with the hashtag FortniteXAvengers quotes the quote, "whatever it takes," end quote, tagline of Avengers Endgame, and gives it a release date of April 25th, the day of the first public screenings for the movie. The tweet was accompanied by the image with a Fortnite character holding Captain America's iconic shield. Epic unfortunately did not provide any specific details about what to expect, but it would be a surprise if Cap's shield doesn't show up in the Battle Royale game in some capacity. We might be able to look at how Epic approached last year's Infinity Gauntlet mode, which did not include any Avengers skins. If any are added this time, expect them to be premium items on the in-game store, not something added to the current season's Battle Pass, which is nearing its end. That crossover event coincided with Infinity War's release. The game mode allowed you to equip the fabled Infinity Gauntlet and transform into Thanos, allowing you to play as the big bad from the MCU. But while you'd expect the Infinity Gauntlet to be strong, it was deemed far too powerful and got nerfed almost immediately, helping to ensure more players would have a fair shake to get their hands on it. Still, this mode allowed Epic to embrace a much different way of playing the game, as instead of the standard Battle Royale flow, players would rush to get their hands on the Gauntlet's powers. The community had suggested that the limited time mode, Infinity Gauntlet mode, yeah, that's what it says, could come back for in-game's release. The teaser doesn't confirm the return of that to the game, but it does at least show that Fortnite isn't letting the conclusion of the Infinity Saga pass by unnoticed. So, if you're a Fortnite fan and or Avengers fan, more crossover content coming this week. That's it for the news. Got a couple new games and dates here. We have the entire Castlevania Anniversary Collection lineup, which is Castlevania Bloodlines, Kid Dracula, Castlevania The Adventure, Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest. Yep. Make sure there's nothing else here. Simon's Quest has that sweet, sweet bloody tears, man. That's a damn good track. Thing's a banger, as the kids say. Let's see, we're still working on the finish up the Contra Anniversary Collection, but today we're happy to confirm that the Castlevania Anniversary Collection will be coming to the PlayStation Store on May 16th. We can also finally unveil the full lineup of games. Yes, in addition to the already announced Castlevania, Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse, Castlevania 2 Belmont's Revenge, and Super Castlevania 4, you will also get Castlevania Bloodlines, Kid Dracula, Castlevania The Adventure, and Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest. Also, the stylish shooter 13 XIII is getting a remake this year. Let's see, that's coming to PC, PS4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. Trying to see if there is any date on there, because I kind of just gathered it does not appear to have a date attached yet. No, never mind. November 13th, 2019, the remake of 13 is coming. As well as there is a new online PlayStation Gear store that launched in the US, Mexico, and Canada. That can be found at... it is gear.playstation.com if you're in the US, Canada, or Mexico, and there is some sweet, sweet shit on there. As someone that loves mugs and graphic tees of things they love, this is right up my alley, but it's also kind of pricey. And I need to find a way to get my hands on that poop to show off on the show because I love it. And you all know what I love. I love PlayStation and I love fun graphic tees as I wear so often and so frequently. But that is it for the new stuff coming down the road. So if you want to know what is coming this week on the PlayStation Store, we need to do the drop. And remember, the drop is, of course, the new releases for the week of April 22nd, 2019, subject to change without notice, and for the North American PlayStation Store only. A Chair in a Room, Greenwater, comes to PSVR Digital. The eerie and atmospheric thriller immerses you in your own horror story. Use a number of locations, flashbacks, and memories that are often jarring and disorienting. You will solve clues and puzzles to piece together your past. Unlock your memories and reveal why you have awoken in the sinister Greenwater Institute. Day D, Through Time, comes to PS4 Digital April 24th. Brian is a gifted and eccentric scientist who has created a time machine and traveled into the past. But his former friend, Dr. Terrible, is already here. He created a time machine before Brian. Can you stop Dr. Terrible? This adventure is full of mysteries, adventure, and of course journeys through time. Good Lord, that's a terrible game description. This adventure is an adventure. Dr. Terrible. Anyways, Days Gone comes to PS4 Digital and Retail April 26th and is your Alex Derrickson-ass game of the week. Not really. Well, yes, it is, but there's also another Alex Derrickson-ass game of the week, but I'm excited for Days Gone. Days Gone is an open-world action-adventure game set in the harsh wilderness 2 years after a devastating global pandemic. Play as Deacon St. John, a drifter and bounty hunter who rides the broken road, fighting to survive while searching for a reason to live. The other Alex Derrickson-ass game of the week is Jupiter and Mars, which is coming to PS4 and PSVR Digital April 22nd. Jupiter and Mars is an underwater adventure set in a future Earth. Sea levels have risen from melting ice caps and climate change. As a result, the coastal cities are all but completely submerged. Since man's disappearance, the oceans have begun to reclaim themselves. Will Jupiter and Mars succeed in bringing life back to the oceans? Jupiter and Mars are dolphins, so it's like PSVR Echo the Dolphin. So if you're not down for that, I got 2 words for you, and that's Mortal Kombat 11 comes to PS4 Digital and Retail. MK is back and better than ever in the next evolution of the iconic franchise. The all-new custom character variations give unprecedented control of your fighters, and the new graphics engine showcases every eye-popping movement. Mortal Kombat's best-in-class cinematic story mode continues the epic saga over 25 years in the making. And Zeroption Invasion comes to PS4 and PS Vita, digital and cross-buy. Taking inspiration from old-school arcade shooters from the past and adding in some modern touches, Zeroption Invasion is this decade's answer to the arcade shooters of yesteryear, with increasingly difficult gameplay, stunning pixel art, and a chip-tuned soundtrack. And those are your new releases for this week, which brings us to Trophy Talk. Remember, Trophy Talk is the part of the show where I try to take you from 0 to 100 as fast as possible because the sanctity of trophies don't mean shit in a life with impermanence. We're going to pull Zeroption Invasion because this feels like a Ratalika game. And, oh yeah, it absolutely is. That's a Ratalika trophy list. And I'm pulling Jupiter and Mars. And going to pull Iron Snout because that is also a Ratalika game. But that is the Australian trophy list. So I don't think I want that one. Not that I think anything's different, but it is a little bit. And we'll pull Ghost Giant. So I got a handful here. Let's take a look. Ghost Giant's where we'll start. It's got 12 bronze, 15 silver, 4 gold, and a platinum, and I don't remember if I did this one last week. So let's see. Finish the story, find all the collectibles, find hidden hats, blow away all pinwheels, poke all caterpillars, score all basketball hoops, complete by the lake, complete on the farm. So those all look like chapters. So yeah, it's basically a collectathon, some small things here and there. And then finishing the game. Does not seem too bad. I think it was Jonathan Dornbush on Twitter said it's a pretty achievable, pretty easy trophy list. It's about a 4 or 5 hour game. So I need to check out Ghost Giant because that definitely tickled my fancy. Iron Snout has 0 bronze, 5 silver, 10 gold, and a platinum. Let's see here. Get humped by a mini wolf. Off to a great start. Put a basket hat on a wolf. Impale an enemy with a tree branch. Kick the same enemy head twice. Kill 500 wolves. Kill 750 wolves. Okay, so if we're being honest here, if I'm looking at this trophy accomplishment percentage on PSN profiles, it is at a 91.25% platinum and an 84.9% platinum completion on the PlayStation Network. So that is an easy platinum right there for you. Zeroption Invasion, which, like I said, has, 11 gold and a platinum, I think, was what we were looking at. Let me find it again. Yeah, 11 gold and a platinum. It currently sits with a 100% platinum on PSN profiles and a 100% platinum on the PlayStation Network, where it looks like one person having played it 2 days ago as part of PlayStation or as part of PSN profiles. So it's just a high score, completing 7 levels, and then destroy the boss of the first area, destroy the boss of the second area, and die for the first time, and that will get you the platinum. Notably, Radalika Games have been having a habit of being 10 to 20 minute platinums. So you can get that on the cheap probably for a couple bucks and then get an easy platinum. Jupiter and Mars has 22 bronze, 12 silver, 4 gold, and a platinum. Currently sits at a 0% across the board. So if we're looking at difficult, the hang-up trophies, we'll look at the hang-up trophies here. Find all treasures is currently sitting at a 0. And then finding all the treasures in each individual area looks like it's sitting at a 0. Rescue the crabs in the realm of Poseidon is at a 0, and rescue the manta rays in Atlantis are at a 0. Everything else is at a 100% or a 50%. So it looks like it's just those collectibles and then the 2 aquatic animal specific ones with the manta rays and the crabs are the hang-ups. Other than that, it seems like it's a pretty achievable one. So you got a lot to work with here this week. But that does, of course, bring us to the end of the 57th, I think I said earlier, edition of the PlayStation Forecast. Thank you guys all again so much for listening week in and week out. If this is your first episode and you've made it all the way to the end, thank you. I hope you come back for next week. Be sure if you're watching the video version, subscribe. If you're watching the live version, I forgot to update the title cards on Twitch. I just realized that. So now making a checklist is going to be the new thing that I need to work on. Thank you guys. Again, I love you all so much. Remember, you can support the show at patreon.com/pressxtoalex for $1 a month. If you don't have the dollar, no big deal. Just subscribe on YouTube, follow on Twitch, subscribe on the podcast service of choice, and a 5-star review, and sharing it does far more than you could possibly ever imagine. Again, you can always find me on Twitter at twitter.com/pressxtoalex. But until next week, I'm really hungry. So I'm going to go get something to eat. Y'all have a great rest of your week. I love you. Take care. And until next time, do the thing.